I want you to take a second and just picture a genie.
Oh, I bet I know exactly what you're seeing.
Right. Chances are, right this exact moment, you were imagining this friendly, singing, blue cartoon character.
Yeah.
Maybe he's, cracking jokes, doing some celebrity impressions.
Completely harmless.
Exactly. Just happily granting wishes with a theatrical spin and this big, comforting smile.
The ultimate magical sidekick. I mean, it's the cosmic best friend whose entire existence basically revolves around helping a plucky human get the girl or find the gold.
Yeah.
It is a very comforting, deeply ingrained pop culture image.
It really is. But today, we are taking that comforting Hollywood image and completely shattering it.
We really are.
Our mission in today's deep dive into our stack of Arabic folklore and mythological sources is to strip away that family-friendly veneer. We are going to uncover the real, terrifying, and deeply symbolic creature of ancient Arab imagination, the Mard.
Because the actual Mard of the original lore, well, it sits at the absolute top of the mythological food chain. They are literal forces of nature.
Yeah, they are.
And exploring where they come from, how they operate, and their highly complex, often really violent relationship with humanity, it actually reveals an incredible amount about our own human psychology.
Our deepest fears, basically.
Right, our fears and our darkest desires.
But before we can even touch on the wishes or the magic lamps, we have to travel back in time to set the scene. We're talking about the vast, harsh, pre-Islamic deserts of the Arabian Peninsula.
Oh, absolutely. Brutal landscapes.
Right. These were places so desolate, so overwhelmingly empty and unforgiving, that ancient Arabs actually actively avoided the deep dunes. Like they were terrified of what lurked out there in the shifting sands.
And that environmental context is the key to understanding everything else. I mean, you don't get a creature as formidable as the Marid emerging from like a gentle rolling meadow.
No, definitely not.
Or a temperate forest. You get it from a landscape that can literally kill you in a dozen different ways by noon. The desert in ancient times was an active adversary.
Right, it was an enemy.
Exactly. So the entities believed to inhabit those deep, empty spaces, they had to reflect that extreme, lethal hostility.
And our sources point out that to really understand the anatomy of this creature, we have to look at their elemental origins. Because like all jinn in Islamic and Arabic tradition, the Mard is created from something very specific, which is smokeless fire.
Yeah, smokeless fire.
And mechanically, that idea is just fascinating. Because normal fire produces smoke, ash, soot. It leaves a physical residue.
Which means it's tethered to the earthly realm.
Exactly. But smokeless fire.
It implies pure, unadulterated thermal energy. It's this blazing, invisible heat, very much like the deadly mirages of the desert itself. And that elemental purity is the foundation of their entire being.
They aren't bogged down by matter.
Right. They are not weighed down by physical matter in the way that humans who are supposedly made of clay are. Clay is heavy.
It's static and muddy.
Exactly. Fire is dynamic, consuming, and totally chaotic.
And the sources show that the linguistic root of their name actually comes from an ancient word marada, meaning to rebel, to become obstinate, or to be fiercely insolent.
Yeah, insolence is a big part of it.
So rebellion isn't just, a mood they wake up in. Rebellion is the literal definition of what they are. It's baked right into their spiritual DNA.
And the origin theory behind that rebellion adds this whole other layer of dread. The ancient Arabs didn't necessarily believe that the Mard just popped into existence as these ultimate godlike beings.
Right, they weren't just born that way.
No, there was a prevailing belief that some ordinary jinn living out there in the deepest, harshest parts of the desert actually evolved over vast stretches of time.
Wow.
They survived the brutal elements, cannibalized the energy of the desert, grew in power, and eventually mutated into these invincible giants. We call them the Marada.
It's almost like a twisted mythological version of natural selection. Or, honestly, it sounds like leveling up in a video game.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Right. You start as this basic, low-level spirit just trying to survive the harsh desert biome. You endure for centuries, you absorb that pure, smokeless heat, and you just grind until you shed all your weaknesses.
You put in the 10,000 hours.
Exactly. And you transform into this unstoppable, rebellious force of nature. It's literally the survival of the absolute fiercest.
They are entirely self-made monsters. Their power is forged through endurance and pure defiance. And a creature that spends, 10,000 years surviving the harshest crucible on Earth, it does not bow to anyone easily.
No, of course not.
Their physical presence and their standing in the supernatural world absolutely reflect that hard-won dominance.
And that idea of survival of the fiercest, perfectly explains their status as the apex predators of the unseen world. Because I always assumed the Ifrit were the most dangerous entities in this lore.
Oh, a lot of people think that.
Yeah, but the sources actually put the Marid in a completely different weight class above them. It's a very strict hierarchy.
It really is.
Yeah.
The mythological pyramid of the Jinn is clearly stratified, and understanding the mechanics of it shows just how terrifying the Marid actually is. So at the base, you have the ordinary Jinn.
The entry-level guys.
Right. Less powerful, closer to the mortal realm. And while some are tricksters, many can be peaceful or even just ignore humans entirely. But moving up, you encounter the Ifrit.
And the Ifrits are the ones usually associated with the underworld and Rians, right?
They are, yeah. The Ifrits are incredibly cunning, highly intelligent, and very dangerous, but their physical scale is still somewhat manageable. They rely mostly on trickery and dark magic.
Okay, got it.
Then above them, you have the Shaitan, who are associated less with brute physical strength and more with pure spiritual corruption and malice.
Like pure evil.
Pure, absolute evil. But at the very top, radiating sheer primordial power, is the Marid.
The ultimate boss.
The apex.
And their physical description in these ancient texts is just wild. Like, they don't have one fixed shape, but when they do manifest in their true form, they are usually described as giants.
This massive giant.
Not just tall. We are talking tens of times taller than a human being, just towering over the landscape. Their bodies are literally made of glowing blue or red flames. Their eyes shine like burning embers, and their voices are said to sound like roaring thunder or crashing storms.
Just imagine standing in a quiet, dark desert under the stars and suddenly hearing a voice that sounds like a literal weather event.
Terrifying.
It's designed to evoke pure, visceral terror. Yet despite that towering, fiery form, the folklore states they are unparalleled masters of shape-shifting.
Right.
They can condense that massive energy to turn into animals, into ordinary humans, or simply dissipate into thin air.
Which is so creepy.
Some regional folktales describe them with horns and massive wings, while others say they can appear surprisingly elegant, though always deeply, unnervingly imposing.
Which brings up a huge question for me. Our sources explicitly state that these beings have the sheer, overwhelming physical power to smash mountains and uproot giant trees.
Yes.
If you have that kind of brute, world-breaking strength, why bother shape-shifting into something as fragile as a human being? Or something as formless as smoke? I mean, is it purely for stealth, or is this a calculated psychological tactic to toy with people?
Well, the answer lies directly in that core concept of their name, the insolence and rebellion. When you possess absolute, uncontested power, brute force actually becomes incredibly boring.
Oh, wow.
Think about it. You are an apex predator. Nothing can physically challenge you. So, shapeshifting into a human or an animal allows them to interact with, observe, and fundamentally break humanity on a psychological level. It is purely psychological warfare.
Because crushing a human with a mountain is just over in a second.
Exactly the point the ancient stories make. There are folklore accounts of a Marid taking the form of a starving lost hound in the desert.
Oh, no.
Yeah, a desperate human traveler, already low on supplies, takes pity on the hound and shares his last pouch of water. The moment the hound drinks, its eyes ignite like coals.
That is awful.
It grows to the size of a storm cloud, laughs with the sound of a rock slide, and just vanishes, leaving the traveler to die of thirst, knowing his own charity doomed him.
That is so dark.
Why just kill a human when you can trick them into ruining their own life and enjoy the show? It speaks to a really deep, malicious intelligence.
That is so much worse than a simple monster. I mean, it means they aren't just natural disasters. They are natural disasters that can think, plot, and hold a grudge.
Exactly.
And that immense power and shape-shifting ability leads us directly into the central conflict of all this folklore. What actually happens when a fragile human made of clay crosses paths with a malicious intelligence made of fire?
The imbalance of power is just staggering. Beyond super strength, the sources list a terrifying supernatural toolkit. They have super speed, which functions more like instant teleportation across vast distances. They wield elemental magic, capable of igniting spontaneous fires or stirring up massive sandstorms. They can render themselves entirely invisible. And, crucial to the later myths, they possess the ability to alter reality itself, what we call granting wishes.
And according to the lore, their habitats are the most inaccessible places on Earth. They live in the deep, trackless deserts, remote mountain peaks, endless dark caves, and in some narratives, even the bottom of the sea.
They really actively avoid us.
But when a human does encounter one, The texts outline three very distinct relationships that can form. The first is simply the enemy.
The enemy dynamic is the most common and honestly the most natural state of affairs. The Merid views humans with absolute contempt. We are made of mud, they're made of pure energy.
We're basically dirt to them.
Exactly. If a human wanders into their abandoned territories, a deep cave or a desolate stretch of dunes, the Merid views them as a filthy interloper. They will actively harm, curse, or kill the human simply for existing in their space. It is a completely antagonistic relationship based on territorial dominance and elemental disgust.
Right. And then there's the second relationship, which is the captive. This is the one we are most familiar with from Western fairy tales.
The classic trope.
Yeah, the Merid is trapped, usually inside a brass vessel like a magic lamp, a bottle, or an enchanted ring. And because they are captive, they are forcefully bound to obey whoever frees them or holds the vessel.
And the third relationship is a slight variation, but arguably far more dangerous: the servant. In this scenario, the Merid isn't trapped in a physical lamp, but is being directly controlled by a human sorcerer who possesses highly specific ancient spells.
Oh, so they're just magically bound.
Right. But the text is incredibly clear on this point. Even as a servant, the Merid remains highly dangerous and entirely unpredictable. They are never truly tamed.
So trying to control a Merid as a servant is basically like trying to keep a Category 5 hurricane on a leash.
That's a perfect analogy.
Sure, it is immensely useful if it works.
Yes.
I mean, you have ultimate reality-bending power at your fingertips. But that hurricane never stops pulling, never stops swirling, and it is constantly threatening to turn around and completely destroy the person holding the leash.
Because a hurricane has no loyalty. A creature whose very name means rebel is never going to accept being subservient.
Right.
They are constantly looking for a loophole in the magical contract, a weakness in the spell's pronunciation, or a flaw in the master's command. They obey the letter of the law while completely subverting the spirit of it.
And holding that leash is best exemplified by the single most famous Merid story in human history. We are talking about the 1001 Nights, the Arabian Nights, and specifically the story of Aladdin and the Magic Lamp.
Yeah, and looking at the Aladdin story through the lens of everything we've just discussed, it completely changes the tone of the narrative.
It really does.
In the original Arabic text, when the giant Merid emerges from that lamp, it speaks a very specific rhyming pledge. It announces, Shubek lubek abduk banye yadek, which essentially means, your wish is my command, your servant is between your hands.
See, on the surface, that sounds like the ultimate jackpot for the human.
Total jackpot.
But connecting it to the broader lore of what a Merid actually is, there is a deep, terrifying tension in that phrase. You have a creature of ultimate mountain-smashing power, a being of smokeless fire whose very soul is rebellion, offering total groveling submission to a tiny, fragile mortal.
It's so unnatural.
Exactly. That submission is completely artificial. It's forced by magic. The wish you are about to make isn't a gift from a friend. It is a highly volatile transaction with a captive god who absolutely despises you.
And because of that, every word of that wish becomes a legal negotiation with a hostile entity.
Yeah.
If you ask a Merid to make you a prince, they might teleport your consciousness into the body of a prince who's currently falling off a cliff or, being assassinated.
Oh, that's rough.
They fulfilled the command technically, but they used the microscopic loopholes in your phrasing to ensure your destruction.
See, I have to push back on the fundamental mechanics of this lore, though. If the Merid's entire identity is based on rebellion and they have this unimaginable world-bending power, how on earth did fragile little humans ever figure out how to trap them in tiny brass lamps and rings in the first place?
It's a fair question.
It feels like a massive plot hole. You can't just wrestle a hurricane into a bottle.
You can't. And the folklore addresses this not as a plot hole, but as a testament to ancient, lost cosmic wisdom. The sources specify that humans could only control them if they possessed very specific divine authority.
Oh, okay.
The most prominent example in the lore is King Solomon. Humans didn't overpower the Merid physically. They bound them legally and magically using the very algorithms of the unseen world.
So it's less about building a really strong physical cage and more about knowing the exact microscopic pressure point to paralyze a giant.
Exactly. The lore states Solomon possessed a magical ring made of interlocking brass and iron. Iron was believed to burn and repel evil jinn, while brass was used to command the good.
Interesting.
More importantly, the ring was stamped with the true, ineffable name of God. When a Merid was sealed in a brass lamp, it wasn't the metal holding them, it was a lead seal stamped with that divine name.
Oh, wow.
The Merid is trapped by the fundamental laws of the universe, locked inside a tiny pocket dimension within the lamp. But it was always a fragile, temporary containment.
And that contradiction, the untamed primordial rebel forced into the tiniest of physical cages by a cosmic legal technicality, isn't just a fun narrative quirk. It's the entire point of the myth.
Yes, absolutely.
Which transitions us perfectly from literal desert folklore to the deep psychological symbolism of the Merid. Because these myths were never just stories about monsters. They were ways for ancient people to process their own reality.
And the sources dive deeply into this symbolism. The first major point is that the Merid represents humanity's attempt to understand forces that are vastly superior to us.
Untamed power.
Right. Symbolically, they embody untamed power. They are the personification of the chaotic forces of nature. Sudden sandstorms, devastating earthquakes, the brutal, unrelenting desert sun.
Things you can't control.
Exactly. These are forces that simply cannot be reasoned with, negotiated with, or easily controlled. When you live in an environment where nature can wipe out your entire tribe overnight, you give that terror a face and a name.
And the second layer of symbolism the sources highlight is arrogance and rebellion. The Merid acts as a cautionary tale about the natural consequences of possessing absolute power.
Yeah, absolute power corrupts.
When you have no equal, when you've spent 10,000 years grinding to the top of the food chain, you become irreparably arrogant. You rebel against any order or authority. The Merid really represents the darkest, most unchecked parts of the human ego.
And the third, and arguably the most relatable symbolism, revolves around human desires. This is the absolute core of the wish-granting trope.
Right, the wishes.
The Merid isn't just a magical ATM dispensing wishes. It is a mirror held up to human greed. When a human is handed the power to alter reality, what do they ask for? Endless wealth, domination over others, violent revenge.
The Merid forces the human to confront their own deepest, often darkest desires. And because the Merid hates the human, it grants the wish in a way that allows the human's own greed to destroy them. It's the ultimate be careful what you wish for mechanism.
Synthesizing all of this, the overarching theme is deeply profound. The Merid occupies this tense, agonizing gray area between forced servitude and violent rebellion.
Yeah.
They aren't just monsters hiding in caves. They reflect our own human anxieties about control. We have a desperate psychological need to control our unpredictable environment. We are terrified of the things we can't control, and we are incredibly susceptible to the corrupting nature of our own boundless greed.
And that rich psychological foundation is exactly why the Merid hasn't just faded away into ancient history. It's why they continue to show up everywhere today. We see their DNA in modern blockbuster movies, in massive TV fantasy series.
Oh, big role-playing video games.
All right, video games, contemporary novels. Sure, they are updated with modern special effects and new storylines, but they're still deeply rooted in this Arabic heritage of power, rebellion, and the inherent danger of the wish.
Because the core human anxieties they represent haven't changed in thousands of years. We are still afraid of untamed power.
Yeah.
We are still obsessed with the fantasy of getting everything we ever wanted without having to actually earn it. The Merid remains the ultimate mythological mechanism to warn us against that specific desire.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's pull all these threads together for you. We started with this incredible image of a creature born of pure, smokeless thermal energy, literally evolving in the harshest, most unforgiving Arabian deserts to become an invincible giant.
We explored its terrifying dominance over the unseen world, sitting right at the top of the mythological pyramid, capable of toppling mountains and using psychological warfare to break human minds.
We uncovered the intricate mechanics of how they are bound by cosmic laws and divine seals, and how their forced servitude in iconic stories like Aladdin acts as a profound warning.
There is a constant, thrilling tension between the creature's true nature as the ultimate rebel and its most famous, tragic role as the captive servant.
It completely reframes every story you've ever heard about a magic lamp or a genie. You aren't looking at a friend, you are looking at a captive force of nature waiting for you to make a mistake.
Exactly.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, let's hear it.
So, we usually pity the poor human who accidentally crosses paths with a malicious, shape-shifting Merid in the desert. We view the human as the victim.
Naturally.
But consider what the Merid actually is it.
Sure.
An immensely proud creature of untamed fire, a literal god of the unseen world. Now imagine that creature, forced by an ancient cosmic legalism to spend eternity trapped in a tiny, cramped brass vessel in total darkness. Its only interaction with the outside world is being occasionally yanked out, simply to grant the selfish, endless, unimaginative whims of greedy mortals.
Wow.
What if the magic lamp isn't actually a prison meant to protect humanity from the monster? What if the lamp is actually a punishment for the married forced to sit there, century after century, witnessing the true monstrosity of human greed up close?
That is a truly terrifying perspective on the lore.
It's definitely something to think about the next time you wish for something. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.